Imagine a man who could walk into a crowded room and instantly win people over. Handsome, intelligent, charming, he seemed like the perfect gentleman. But beneath that polished surface hid a predator so terrifying that even decades later, his name alone sends chills down the spine. His victims were young women, many of them lured by his charisma, his fake injuries, or simply the false sense of safety he projected. He was Ted Bundy, a man who embodied the face of evil wrapped in the mask of normality. Tonight, we dive deep into the chilling story of one of America's most infamous serial killers. From his troubled childhood to his brutal crimes, his shocking escapes, and the media circus of his trial, we'll explore how Bundy deceived not only his victims but also a nation that struggled to comprehend how someone like him could exist. This is not just the story of murders, it's the story of manipulation, deception, and the darkness that can hide in plain sight. Early life. Theodore Robert Bundy was born on November 24, 1946, in Burlington, Vermont. His beginnings were wrapped in secrecy and shame. His mother, Eleanor Louise Cowell, was unmarried, and in the conservative 1940s, that was considered scandalous. To hide the truth, Bundy grew up believing his grandparents were his parents, and his real mother was his sister. This family deception laid the foundation for the confusion and resentment that haunted him later in life. As a boy, Bundy displayed unusual behaviors. Neighbors recalled a quiet, withdrawn child who seemed socially awkward, yet he had moments of charm when he wanted something. He was fascinated by knives and pornography from a young age, an interest that would later escalate into darker obsessions. Despite these warning signs, Bundy excelled academically. He studied psychology at the University of Washington, where he appeared to be a model student. He even dated women, presenting himself as an ambitious young man with a bright future. Outwardly, there was no sign of the monster within. But in his private life, Bundy struggled with feelings of rejection, inadequacy, and a growing compulsion that he couldn't control. His mask of normalcy was nearly perfect, and it would allow him to move through society undetected for years. The crimes begin in the early 1970s. Young women began disappearing across Washington state. At first, the cases seemed unrelated. Students vanishing from college campuses, women abducted from crowded public places. But soon, a chilling pattern emerged. Bundy's modus operandi was as manipulative as it was effective. He often pretended to be injured, wearing a fake cast or using crutches. He would approach women asking for help carrying books or loading something into his car. Once they were close enough, his true nature revealed itself. Victims were struck unconscious, bound, and driven to remote locations. What made Bundy particularly terrifying was his ability to blend into society. Witnesses often describe him as good-looking and friendly. The idea that a seemingly respectable young man could be a killer was unthinkable at the time. Police struggled to connect the dots. In July 1974, Bundy committed 2 brazen daylight abductions at Lake Sammamish State Park, just hours apart. Several women reported a man named Ted with a sling, asking for help with his boat. 2 young women, Janice OTT and Denise Naslund, never returned home. Their disappearance finally put a name and face together for investigators. By the time authorities realized the scale of his crimes, Bundy had already escalated. He abducted, assaulted, and murdered dozens of young women across multiple states, leaving behind a trail of devastation. Bundy's crimes grew more frequent and more violent. Unlike many killers who remain in one area, Bundy traveled. His murders spanned Washington, Oregon, Utah, Colorado, and eventually Florida. This mobility made it extremely difficult for law enforcement to track him. Investigators would later discover that Bundy often revisited his crime scenes, engaging in disturbing acts with the remains of his victims. His obsession with control and domination went beyond murder. It was about total possession. By 1975, police had a suspect. Bundy's girlfriend, Elizabeth Klopfer, had called authorities, suspicious of his behavior. She noticed strange items in his possession: plaster casts, knives, even a meat cleaver. Though she provided his name, investigators lacked solid evidence to arrest him. But Bundy's downfall began with a traffic stop. In August 1975, Utah police pulled him over for a minor violation. Inside his car, they found burglary tools, masks, and handcuffs. Soon, pieces began to fall into place, linking him to missing women. Still, Bundy's charm and intelligence allowed him to manipulate those around him. He studied law, representing himself in court, and convinced some people of his innocence. But behind the confident smile, he was plotting his next move. Ted Bundy's story is infamous not only for his murders but also for his escapes. In 1977, while awaiting trial in Colorado, Bundy jumped out of a courthouse window during a recess. He was recaptured days later. But this wouldn't be his last attempt. Later that year, Bundy escaped again, this time from his jail cell. He had carefully sawed through a hole in the ceiling and lost nearly 35 pounds to fit through the small opening. 4 months, Bundy remained at large, traveling across the country undetected. His freedom would prove catastrophic. In January 1978, Bundy surfaced in Florida, unleashing one of the most horrific attacks in American history. At Florida State University's Chi Omega sorority house, he broke in during the early hours of the morning. Armed with a piece of firewood, he brutally attacked several women, killing 2 and severely injuring others. The violence was shocking, even by Bundy standards. Days later, he abducted and murdered a 12-year-old girl, Kimberly Leach. It was the crime that would ultimately seal his fate. Bundy was finally captured in February 1978 after being pulled over once again in a stolen car. This time, there would be no escape. Ted Bundy's trial became a media spectacle unlike anything the United States had ever seen. Cameras were allowed inside the courtroom, broadcasting every detail to millions of viewers. Bundy, ever the narcissist, relished the attention. He chose to represent himself, cross-examining witnesses and addressing the jury directly. His intelligence and charm captivated some observers, even as overwhelming evidence stacked against him. Women flocked to the courtroom, some expressing admiration for him, a disturbing testament to Bundy's manipulative power. But the facts were undeniable. Survivors gave harrowing testimony of Bundy's attacks. Forensic evidence, including bite marks on one of the sorority victims, linked him directly to the crimes. In 1979, Bundy was convicted of the Chi Omega murders and sentenced to death. A year later, he was given another death sentence for the murder of Kimberly Leach. Even as he sat on death row, Bundy continued to play games. He confessed to more murders only when he believed it might delay his execution. Estimates suggest he killed at least 30 women, though the true number may never be known. On January 24, 1989, Ted Bundy was executed in the electric chair at Florida State Prison. Outside, crowds gathered to celebrate. People cheered, held signs, and even sold Bundy burgers. For many, it was a moment of closure after years of terror. But Bundy's legacy is more complicated. His crimes forced law enforcement to develop new methods for tracking serial offenders. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit grew in response to killers like him, studying psychological patterns to catch predators faster. Bundy also left behind a chilling reminder of how evil can hide behind a mask of normalcy. He wasn't a monster lurking in the shadows. He was someone's classmate, co-worker, even a law student. That contradiction continues to fascinate and horrify people today. Books, films, and documentaries have examined every detail of his life. But at the heart of the story are the victims, young women whose lives were stolen by a man who showed no remorse. Remembering them, rather than glorifying Bundy, is perhaps the most important legacy of all. Ted Bundy wanted to be remembered. He wanted fame, power, and recognition, even in death. But what we must remember are the lessons his story teaches: that danger can wear a friendly smile, that evil can be ordinary, and that justice, though delayed, can prevail. Bundy's tale is not just about murder. It's about manipulation, deception, and the terrifying reality that some people are capable of unimaginable cruelty. His story forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about human nature and about ourselves. If you found this deep dive into Ted Bundy's crimes thought-provoking, don't forget to subscribe for more true crime stories where we uncover the darkest chapters of history. And as always, stay safe.